Welcome to CBS Sports HQ, delivered by Papa John's. This week, the SEC on CBS, delivering you the highest-ranked game that has ever been played in Athens, Georgia. We're about to give you picks for every ranked game this week. But first, we have got number 1 Tennessee at number 3 Georgia, with playoff implications on the line.
Tennessee's season has felt like a big-budget thriller. The plot? Seeking vengeance after decades of pain. Led by Heisman frontrunner Hendon Hooker, the Vols have used this year to wage vendettas and settle scores. First, payback against Pittsburgh after last season's loss at home. Then, avenging the past 5 years against Florida and making a statement to open conference play. Their greatest triumph so far, getting the ultimate revenge against a most formidable foe. Taking down Alabama for the first time since 2006, sending Knoxville into a frenzy and their own goalposts into the river. But now the toughest test of all, between the hedges against the defending national champs. The Dogs own 5 straight wins over the Vols and are winners of 10 of the last 12 in the series, presenting yet another opportunity for Tennessee to get even.
You can win a game with confidence because you've paid the price, you've worked, you've prepared to go out and play the right way. Both teams, I'm sure, are confident and should be.
But Georgia's looking for a Hollywood ending of its own. Kirby Smart's group pulled off quite the job last season, beating their kryptonite when it mattered most. And this year's Dogs, vicious, hungry, and well aware they'll need to be all bites in order to handle this vengeful Tennessee team.
We have to keep getting better. Like, we're not there, and people want to put us there, but we're not there.
The Dogs looking to remain on top. The Volunteers here to cross another name off their list. The cast is star-studded. The stage is set. The scenes in Athens promise to be pure theater. And we have it live on CBS.
We are getting you ready. Oh, look at that throwback there.
Picks.
Can y'all just give me a glimpse into what was going on when these pictures were taken? Danny, I want to start with you.
That might be the first and only time I have a better head of lettuce than our guy BQ right here. That might be it.
That goatee,
I
too.
can't grow that face lettuce you like.
That's right. Definitely a little thicker there.
Bring that back?
What? Maybe I should.
What is that?
And the sideburns. I like the sideburns as well.
Just for men. Get that king.
Well, maybe it'll bring you luck. Maybe you start doing that. So last week, Brady went 11-8. Danny, you went 10-9. Brady's still slightly ahead. Congratulations. I didn't get to see you last week.
We got a lot of football left to be played. This is, to me, a huge weekend. A lot of great games, but also some big spreads, especially in some of these more competitive games.
It'll be a lot of fun, Danny.
See, I'm all about chemistry, team chemistry, camaraderie, so I'm going to point out that we're both well over 500. That's true. And let's just, the competition keeps pushing us to greater heights. That's the way I look at it.
Like one of those awesome weeks where I'm way over, I'm almost perfect. I haven't had that yet. You had a really good one.
It was good at the beginning. Like, you guys went back and forth a little bit.
Let's both elevate.
Okay, let's get into this week. Week 10 here, starting with number 1 Tennessee at number 3 Georgia. Tickets, by the way, to get into this one start at about $500. It is the closest line for Georgia all season. They are still favored by more than a touchdown here. They're favored by 8.5. The total 66. Brady, we'll start with you.
That line seems really big for two teams. At least statistically speaking, they're really evenly matched. The only exception is the defense, and that's in part because Tennessee's given up so many big plays. They give up more trips down to the red zone. They give up a higher percentage of points in the red zone as compared to Georgia, which is much better in each one of those situations, limiting big plays, red zone defense, all that stuff. I'm more curious, though, because I think I know what we're going to get out of Hendon Hooker. It's how Georgia can shut down Jalen Hyatt. And we know what Tennessee likes to do, the up-tempo offense, wide splits, and they really try to isolate those wide receivers and then force you to have to adjust. Either play man-to-man, they'll run by you. Play off, they'll throw in front of you. You play outside, they'll break inside. That's kind of the predicament that they put Georgia in. This is a Georgia defense that's about as good as anyone. I don't feel good about it. I'm laying the 8.5 points here, though. I do see a scenario where Hendon Hooker just is the better quarterback between him and Stetson Bennett. And that's not taking anything away from Stetson Bennett, but he's coming off his worst performance of the season so far versus Florida last week.
Georgia, devastating loss to that defense. Nolan Smith, their lead sacker, lead guy with tackles for loss, a loss for the season also, but out for this game, and a leader of that defense is one of the veterans out there. But I'm with you. I think you lay the points with Georgia playing at home. I think there's a championship pedigree here that's going to showcase itself, and a championship defense which is going to showcase itself. And also Tennessee, as much as we've talked about them, and they've had a fantastic year, and I don't want to take away from them, they're still well in the 80s as far as total defense. This defense is gettable, and I think the run game of Georgia is really going to be crucial. I'm with you, though. I think this is going to be a really fascinating matchup. I think it could be close. But even going back to look at, and I think that first quarter, that surge, Tennessee is awesome. Josh Heupel's a great offensive mind. They've outscored their opponents incredibly in that first quarter. I think Georgia has to withstand that initial surge, and if they do, I think they'll handle it. They'll run away from them late. If they don't, it's not like the Alabama game. Remember, it was 28-10, Tennessee. Yeah. You're like, this is going to be a rout. Bama comes back. I don't think Georgia can come back like that, but I think they control them and don't give up the big play early in this game.
Two things. The first is the tight ends for Georgia.
Yeah.
I just want to see who's going to match up with Bowers and Washington. I mean, they both have their own unique skill set of why they're so hard to match up with. Washington, his size and athleticism. Bowers, his speed and athleticism for a guy that plays tight end. And then, I don't want to make too much of this, but whoever loses this game is still in it. Like bottom line is, based on what we saw from the college football playoff rankings, I look at it and I say each one of these teams, whoever loses, is still in a really good position if they win out to still make it into the playoff. And I'm saying not go to the SEC championship game. They're still going to be in that conversation, I think.
I think it depends on the score. If it gets sideways and one team gets run, then they might be out of it. But if it's close, they'll definitely be in the conversation. But there's so many hypotheticals that you have to walk through to have these teams play out. Like an undefeated Power 5 conference champ is in, no matter what. But who's going to run it?
Well, the only reason I'll step back against that is not if it's TCU.
Oh, I think so.
Because you're already seeing TCU behind 3 SEC teams.
Yeah, but
so there's a scenario when if Alabama wins the SEC, and Georgia beats Tennessee, and that's Tennessee's only loss, and Georgia's only loss in the SEC championship game. We already saw them put both in last year.
But Georgia's resume then would only be the win against Tennessee and Oregon. And TCU, while they might not have that top 5 win, their complete resume would be really complete.
You're thinking that by the end.
Right.
But there right now is a lot of beating up right now in the Big 12 of each other. And I don't know what that resume looks like when it's all said and done. If it's TCU and Kansas State, who currently has 2 losses, but I think it's looking like maybe that's the team that would end up playing them, but they still have to get through it. I mean, you could be looking at, a top 25 win in a conference championship game, but the rest of that schedule doesn't look quite as good.
We'll talk about TCU here in a little bit. You see them there at 7, hosting Texas Tech this weekend. Make sure they're not looking ahead to going to Austin the weekend after that. All right, so we have the top 2 teams in the SEC East going at it. We also have the top 2 teams in the SEC West, and because of the college football playoff rankings, we now have a top 10 matchup, whether you agree with that, with 2-loss LSU or not. Number 6, Alabama at number 10, LSU. First time that Nick Saban, Brian Kelly meeting during the regular season. Alabama, 13.5-point favorite on the road here, the total 58. Danny.
Too many points for me. I like what LSU has been doing. They've quietly been kind of figuring things out. Jaden Daniels has accounted for 20 touchdowns and just 1 interception between his throwing prowess and what he's able to do with his legs. But to me, this is more about Alabama. And if this was in Tuscaloosa, I'd probably say lay them. But on the road, that's where I do think they're vulnerable, where it's tougher to communicate, tougher to protect Bryce Young, which they've struggled to do at times. And this Bama team, I go back to the game at Texas, when you did lose Quinn Ewers and Hudson Card, still had them in that game, and they're vulnerable to the big plays. I think Jaden Daniels keeps LSU in this game within that 13.5. Ultimately, I think Alabama will pull away, but I think their defense is gettable. Kayshon Boutte, one of the better wide receivers in the SEC. I think he gets some good production. So I think this will be a good game. I just don't think Alabama will be able to just walk into Baton Rouge and blow them away.
This is one of those lines, and looking at the last game we just talked about, the SEC, hey, it looks like too many points. I felt the same way with this one, and it's leading me to think that someone knows something. And I think if you look at the progress that LSU, in particular Jaden Daniels, has made, you touched on it, he's been phenomenal. I mean, over the past couple weeks, completing 74% of his passes, averaging, almost 300 yards per game passing. That was not the way the season started off with for LSU. The difference is he played the 67th ranked defense a couple weeks ago and 117th ranked last week in total defense. So a much greater challenge when you take on Alabama that's top 15. And for me, when I look at how these two teams stack up, it's actually been LSU that's had a harder time protecting Jaden Daniels this season, or just even the quarterback position in general. And I think they're going to struggle against Alabama in the way they rush the passer. But the unsung hero will be Jahmyr Gibbs when it's all said and done. I think Alabama's going to hang their hat on the rushing attack, and that's where Bama ends up covering what looks to be a big spread. But they kind of flex now on LSU, which they've looked good of late. I'm still not really sure what this LSU team is yet.
Both like Alabama to win, which they cannot afford to lose a game if they do want into that playoff there. But Danny, as you take a look at the recap of what we have going on so far here in the SEC, saying take the points with LSU, but both agree lay them with Georgia, hosting #1 Tennessee there in Athens. Coming up, we're just getting started, giving you picks for all ranked games for Week 10, including another ranked versus ranked game, Wake Forest at NC State. We'll head to the ACC next. Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ, delivered by Papa John's, taking a look at ACC ranked games we've got coming up for Week 10 this Saturday. Clemson, their final road game of the season. They're favored by 3.5 on the road in South Bend, but against Brady, Quinn, and improving Irish squad. We saw the tweets, the congratulations on Saturday. We'll get to that game in a second. But first, let's start with number 21 Wake Forest and number 22 NC State. NC State with their third starting quarterback of the season here. So first it was Devin Leary, then Jack Chambers. They are now turning to MJ Morris in this game. We did see him come in that last one. He did well, got a win there. Wake favored by 4.5 on the road. The total's 54, Brady.
He did well, but they're largely one-dimensional. I mean, let's be honest. He's a young quarterback at that position. He's athletic. He can run the football. The passing game is a work in progress. And by the way, that's not a knock on MJ Morris. It has been the entire season for NC State. This team has been largely led by their defense. And I think that's what's going to keep this game close for a period of time. But look, Wake Forest stumbled last week, and that was their own doing. I mean, they had, 8 turnovers in total? I mean, it was an unbelievable second half. I've never witnessed anything like that before in my life. I'm betting that doesn't happen this week. So I'm laying the 4.5 points. I think so Wake's a much better team than what they showed versus Louisville. They get back on track here, and unfortunately for NC State, Danny, that one-dimensional ability I think catches up with them.
Nobody walks into Carter Finley Stadium and walks away unscathed. That's what I'm worried about for Wake Forest. I actually like the pass game which they had with MJ Morris. They were down 21-3, remember? Oh yeah, they're not. It actually is a really good place to play. They bring a lot of energy. It doesn't have the size and the overwhelming spectacle that some of these stadiums do. But I think with MJ Morris, we saw them down 21-3 against Virginia Tech. Then he brings them roaring back to get the win. 3 touchdown passes. I think he's going to be playing with a lot of confidence. And their quarterback, even when Devin Leary was playing, that offense was not anywhere close to what it was last year. Very curious to see what this defense does with Wake Forest offense, because as you mentioned, those turnovers last week, can they create any of those as well? What does Wake do? Because they feel like something's kind of off there. This number to me is scary. I don't like this game, but I'm going to go ahead and take NC State, kind of picking up on that momentum they had in the second half last week.
I think that was probably Virginia Tech's defense, but Wake Forest isn't much better either way, so we'll see what MJ Morris can do this week.
We have number 4 Clemson at Notre Dame. I mentioned coming into this Clemson's final road game of the season. Tennessee, Georgia may have a little bit more wiggle room. Clemson, they got to be perfect down the stretch there. 3.5 favored in South Bend. Mr. Irish, Mr. Fighting Irish. Sorry, we put the graphic on the wrong side for you. I guess you're down the middle.
Yeah, I'm down the middle. The interesting thing about this is, Clemson's coming off of a bye. What was happening though the last time out, Danny?
Oh, DJ got benched. There's a quarterback controversy.
So let me ask you this: is that a good or bad thing?
I would have rather played right away. I don't want to sit on that game.
So that's how I felt about it. And I wonder if this is stewing. I wonder if that's playing in his mind more. Maybe he's looking over his shoulder even more so if he goes out there and doesn't play well. Now, the last time DJ Uiagalelei was in South Bend, played fantastic.
Yeah.
Arguably might have been his best game as a quarterback in his college career. Different challenge, though. This is a really good defense. It's kind of flown under the radar, but I think you've seen that now in the past few weeks. Notre Dame, if they can run the football versus this Clemson defense, I think they can hang around in this one. And look, their special teams has been special. They've had 2 block punts the past couple of weeks. And so I think Notre Dame hangs around in this one. The 3.5 here with that hook and a home underdog, I'll take the points.
I'm with you. I look at, and I talked to Dabo Sweeney this week, and he was talking about the commitment to DJ, and I was kind of blown away. I don't know if you, Brady, I never would have had a coach that stood by me as much through thick and thin as as Dabo has stood by DJ and just said, nope, this is our guy. I mean, he was very quick after that game to say there's no quarterback controversy. I think he realizes his quarterback is a little fragile with his confidence, and he's trying to make sure that he doesn't lose it. But after that performance and getting benched, that's easier said than done. And you can praise him all week, but you don't know what version of DJ you're going to get. I'll tell you what you do know you're going to get, and this is when Clemson wins, is when they run Will Shipley. He's been a special back, but I think Notre Dame has some success shutting him down. They're going to be one of the more physical fronts that Clemson will face on the season. So I think this is a tight game, comes down to a field goal late.
And Dabo, I mean, right after that last game, he was right there saying it, and he's continued to say it this entire time. Number 17, North Carolina at Virginia here. North Carolina did announce some injuries. Des Evans and Caleb Hood, they're out for the rest of the season, but you still got Drake May. They're 7-1 heading into this. Virginia 3-5. North Carolina favored by 7.5 on the road. The total's 59, Danny.
I love Drake May. I love the job he's done.
Heisman?
Yeah.
Heisman talk for this
Yeah,
guy?
man, I told you get those odds
He's
before
starting to creep up there.
He's starting to creep up there. And I think I'm not worried about Drake May. I'm worried about UNC's defense, which has really been their Achilles heel. Then you lose a couple key pieces of that. The one good thing is that Virginia's offense isn't exactly prolific. I mean, they were in a 6-6 shootout last week with the Miami Hurricanes before it got even more explosive in overtime when it finally ended up 14-12, I think was the final score of that game. But I do think Virginia's defense will have some success, and I think they'll be able to move the football everyone has against North Carolina. I think this is a touchdown-type game. Drake May has to carry this team like he's done all season long and score as many possessions as he gets it in order for them to come out on top. So I'm going to go ahead and take the points here with the home team, but I think this is a tough spot for North Carolina. I'm kind of worried about them. They haven't handled success well. Now they're in the top 25. Got to play a tough game here. I don't know. They play down to their competition, it feels.
Sometimes I could see that. I just think this Virginia offense is lacking so much from what we saw a year ago when Robert and I was calling their plays. And now you look at them, and they're a shell of themselves. And I think this game is going to be one in which UNC is going to try to get Virginia into a shootout, and they just can't keep pace. I mean, bottom line is there's no player more important to his team than Drake May. I mean, I think if that was the standard for the Heisman, you'd give it to Drake May right now as far as what he does passing the football, rushing the football, and with the defense that he's got. I mean, he's putting this team on his back. And they're going to be playing the ACC championship game. Like, that's the bottom line. That's the trajectory this team's going. At some point, we're going to have to start talking about them, how they make the way from 17 all the way up the rankings to maybe play in the college football playoff. But I'll lay the 7.5 points here. I think UNC knows, too, they have to keep their foot on the gas with where they are right now if they want any shot whatsoever at having a chance if they win the ACC for the college football playoff berth.
Do you remember what those odds were for Drake May when you said
30-1, I think.
30-1? Okay,
Yeah.
now 20-1. So
Yeah.
There you go.
Listen to Danny Kanell. We get number 20,
gotta win it.
Syracuse. Yeah, exactly. At Pitt. The last time Syracuse won at Pitt, that was 2001. So we got more than 20 years ago. They are 6-2 headed into this. Pitt 4-4. Both teams coming off losses, but Pitt is favored at home by 3.5. Brady, we'll start with you.
And they should be. I mean, look, Syracuse has gone through a gauntlet. You look a few weeks ago playing against NC State. I mean, it's just been physical battle after physical batter. You know, Clemson, Notre Dame. I feel like they're limping into this one. They lose their starting cornerback, Garrett Wilson. He's third on the team in tackles. He's tied for the lead in interceptions. And so this is one where I think Pitt's going to have a lot of success running the football. That defense will be able to get after Garrett Schrader if he starts, or even if it's Carlos Del Rio Wilson, if he ends up playing. It's still undecided right now what it's going to be for this week. So I'm going to go ahead and lay the 3.5 points at Pitt.
I'm with you. Syracuse has been a great story. Dino Babers bringing this program back. It was a really rough spot a couple years ago. He previously had it rolling where they had a 10-win season, but it just feels like this is one of those ones where you're like, wait a second, a 4-4 team against a 6-2 team, and the 4-4 team is favored by 3.5. That tells you the odds makers know. They know something, and I think it's that the better, more talented team is the home team in the Pitt Panthers. And Pat Narduzzi's squad, a lot of teams coming off an ACC championship, high expectations, might feel sorry for themselves, quit on the season. That's not the type of culture that they have there at Pitt. This roster, top to bottom, I still think is significantly better. And Israel Mbanaconda is a really good running back who's flying under the radar. I think he'll take kind of personally the challenge of going against this Syracuse defense, and I think he'll have his way.
Yeah, I think he'll be the better back between him and Sean Tucker.
Recapping our ACC ranked games, and we have our first lock unity between Brady and Danny. Notre Dame and the under, their other agreement, both like the under in North Carolina and Virginia. How is that, Brady?
I think he's nervous, though.
A little nervous.
Honestly, we have not done well when that's been the case.
Lay the points with Pitt at home, hosting Syracuse. Coming up, we'll head to Fort Worth, where TCU looks to remain unbeaten, hosting Texas Tech. The Frogs are favored at home, but can they cover the spread? Next. CBS Sports HQ presented by Papa John's. We got Week 12, and we go to the Big 12 ranked games you got coming up. Texas Tech visiting TCU. TCU only one of 6 teams that remains unbeaten in all of college football. Danny, though, Big 12, we were talking about this during the commercial break. How close is Big 12? I mean, TCU's undefeated, but I mean, really, when you look at everyone across the board, they're right
Top
there.
to bottom, they have the most parity of any Power 5 conference out there. Anybody could really beat anybody. Even going down to Iowa State, who's in last in the standings.
I really thought you were about to say
Texas.
going down to Oklahoma.
They should have beat They should have beat Texas. They had a touchdown pass that would have won the game. They come up short. I mean, anybody could beat anybody in this conference.
West Virginia last week versus TCU, they were right in that ball game.
Yep.
And they were tied with Iowa State as far as overall record.
All right, so our first game that kind of plays into this. We get number 24, excuse me. Whoa, not number 4, Texas. At number 13, Kansas State. Last team each of these teams played, Oklahoma State. Texas lost to them. They had to bye. And then Kansas State got what?
They beat the doors off.
Yes, like to nothing.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely
with
zero.
Will Howard, which
Yep.
no one really saw that coming. We didn't know if Adrian Martinez was going to start play, what the deal was going to be. Jeff Rubley
So Texas
played.
favored by 2.5 in this.
Yeah, and in this case, I'm going to go ahead and I'll take the 2.5 points in the home underdog. I mean, bottom line is Kansas State has surprised us every single time this year. And they either do it with Adrian Martinez, Deuce Vaughn running the football, or do it with Will Howard from the pocket throwing the football, which we didn't think this was possible until maybe last week, where you just drum Oklahoma State. Deuce Vaughn obviously is still the most talented player on offense, but to me, the defense is what stands out, and in particular in this matchup. Ewers is coming off what I believe is his worst performance as a starter versus Oklahoma State a couple weeks ago. But Felix Uzama, he can get after it. He's probably going to be a first-round pick in next year's draft as an edge rusher. Their secondary has the most interceptions of any Big 12 team. They got those sticky fingers back there. So this is a matchup where I'll take the home underdog. I think Kansas State has surprised a lot of people this season.
I think Kansas State might have a little bit of a quarterback. It's a good problem to have, but who do you go with? Adrian Martinez was really one-dimensional. He was a runner that was playing quarterback. Then what you saw last week with Will Howard was a quarterback who could throw it in that system. And then you have Deuce Vaughn, who can be your true runner. He throws for 4 touchdowns. I'm very curious to see what they do if Adrian Martinez is back 100%. Who do they? Yeah, absolutely. Especially the way Adrian Martinez plays, and you keep the other team guessing. And I also think the key to this game isn't Quinn Ewers, it's Bijan Robinson, who, Kansas State has given up a couple 100-yard rushers this season. I think Bijan Robinson could have some success. But I want to see what Quinn Ewers does in response to that game, which was his first road game and was his worst performance as the quarterback at Texas. I'm curious to see how he responds there until I see him kind of get out of this. It's going to be a roller coaster ride in your first year as the starter. Until I see him kind of get a game under his belt after that struggle, I don't trust it. So I'm going to trust what I just saw, and that's Kansas State, who's a really good football team, and now all of a sudden has quarterback depth and has a plethora of options back there to see what they do.
We have Texas Tech at number 7, TCU over in Fort Worth. As I mentioned, TCU still undefeated, 8-0. Most people think, and Danny, you mentioned this, Brady, I'm not sure, that TCU is going to lose at some point. So you got Tech, then they go to Texas, then Baylor, hosting Iowa State to end. So they're favored by 9.5 at home in this one. What do you think about Tech going to Fort Worth there?
So you guys know I have a principle, right?
Yeah.
In
No,
the Big
you have
12,
like 10
Brady remembers,
principles.
you don't pay attention, Amanda. Brady pays attention. If there is a spread of more than a touchdown, you take the underdog. It is just too many points in this conference where they're banging on each other. They're very evenly matched. You see games come down to the wire all the time, even if you have to come from behind. Look at TCU, how many times they've had to come back against Oklahoma State. They're down 14. They come back. Texas Tech could be down 14 or 21. They've got more than enough power to come back in this game, and TCU's defense has been vulnerable. There's one thing that makes me nervous.
Okay.
Sonny Dykes is the king of cover. I mean, that dude always, and you've got some momentum on your side because of that initial 7 ranking. Do you dangle that over your team and say, hey, no one respects you? And do you try to get some style points going away? I would typically think that, but I'm sticking with my principle that maybe you want to do that, but you can't because you're not that much better than the other team.
I'll put it this way. I'm taking the 9.5 points in Texas Tech, in part because this number's inflated to me. You go back to last week and you look at Texas Tech's loss. It was a 1-score game going into the fourth quarter, and then Texas Tech throws 3 of their 5 interceptions in the game in that fourth quarter to help create that separation versus Baylor. So, look, Joey McGuire got off to a great start to start the season. They were 3-1. Then they had a rough patch, right? Tyler Shuck got hurt. Donovan Smith eventually. Bayron Morton now comes in as quarterback. And so I don't know that this team is necessarily as bad as what maybe their record looks. I think this will be a much more competitive game between the two, and in part because TCU's defense isn't very good. They're 89th in total defense in the country. You talked about having to come back from all these leads. They give up a lot of big plays on defense. So just as explosive and as good as their offense is with Kendra Miller running the rock and the way Max Duggan's been able to throw the football around the field, the reality is Texas Tech should be able to do the same thing. So I'll take the 9.5 points. It's just too much for me. By the way, I also like the over. I think this is going to be a back and forth, typical Big 12 game, the over, the 69.5.
Dana, you're on the other side of that total?
Yes, I am.
You think?
I was just looking down at my notes. I forgot which way I had on the total on this one. I'm like Brady, though. If I feel really good about the total, I'll give it to you. If not, I'll just kind of lay it silent.
Just kind of keep it on the side there. Brady feels really good about the over there. Number 18, Oklahoma State at Kansas here. So Oklahoma State coming off that embarrassing blowout loss to Kansas State there. Kansas won their first 5, dropped their past 3. Oklahoma State favored by 2 in this one on the road. Brady, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think this is a bounce-back game for Oklahoma State. I mean, look, since Jalen Daniels have gone down for Kansas, they've just been on a 3-game skid. And that's the tough part is defensively, I think they're going to have a hard time, limiting Spencer Sanders, who obviously didn't play well last week. But it's an opportunity, I think, for Oklahoma State, who now doesn't control their own destiny, to still be in the hunt potentially to get into the Big 12 championship game. And so I'm going to go ahead and lay the 2 points here on the road. Look, Lawrence, Kansas, it was great while it was lasted. Not the same environment anymore, right?
No.
They did have to put out a message asking fans to come to the game.
That's what I'm saying.
They've already said that.
You're not
They've already
getting,
said
like,
that.
game day. You're not getting the national attention like you were earlier this season when you were undefeated. So, unfortunately, it's over. I think Oklahoma State's
Lance Leipold still might be Coach of the Year, and he should be in the consideration for it for the job he's done with Kansas. But I'm with you on this one. Oklahoma State just got absolutely shell-shocked last week. We were talking about Will Howard, the quarterback for Kansas State, throwing 4 touchdowns. I don't think Oklahoma State was expecting that at all. They were probably expecting, hey, a little bit more of the run game than what you had seen previously. Didn't know what to expect with a quarterback who hasn't played that much, and they just got run. And then once things kind of snowballed against you, it's like, oh, okay, this is how this game's going to go. There's been a couple teams. Oklahoma, Amanda, was one of them who desperately needed a win. They got it against Kansas. That was when they turned around their 3-game skid. I think Oklahoma State backs against the wall, takes control of this game early, and doesn't look back. So I'll lay the 2 as well.
I thought you were going to talk about the shutout there for a second that Oklahoma also had, which was, what was it, 49-0?
Yep.
Oklahoma State was 48-0? Yep. Yeah, just not good. Okay, so wait, and I just want to make sure you're taking the under in that one. We have lock unity in this game.
Yeah.
Yes? Awesome. Second lock unity that we've got going on. I believe they're both like Oklahoma State and the under. Agreement on the teams. They're both like Texas and Kansas State to cover as well. Coming up, Ohio State visiting Northwestern this weekend. Northwestern has dropped 7 in a row. Buckeyes favored by 38 on the road, but can they cover it? We'll ask Brady and Danny next. Big Ten ranked games for this Saturday, Week 10 here, and all double-digit spreads. Ohio State, Michigan, both big favorites this weekend. Their big showdown just a little bit more than 3 weeks from now. Welcome back, Brady, Quinn, Danny, Kanell. Let's take a look at number 2, Ohio State at Northwestern. As I mentioned, Northwestern has lost 7 in a row. Ohio State favored by 38 on the road. The total is 58. Brady, Quinn, we'll start with you.
Back-to-back weeks on the road for the Ohio State Buckeyes. They looked great last week. JT Tuimoloau had maybe the best performance I've ever seen from a defensive player. We know how potent this offense is, what they're capable of doing. We know how bad Northwestern is. But back-to-back road games. Early start, 11 a.m. guys going, oh, a little tired. Maybe they kind of don't get off to as fast of a start. You know, if Pat Fitzgerald, Northwestern, going to want to run the football with Evan Hull. Ryan Helinski may be back. He's been dealing with a concussion. If he does come back, obviously gives him a better shot at least throwing the football around. But I'll take the 38 points here and Northwestern. By no means is this game anywhere close. It's just one of those things where I think these big numbers, they've plagued me this year. I think I'm on the right side of this one.
It's a hangover game because they're still feeling good about that win. It's early. You bring up a lot of good points. I just look at this offense, and that game was one. I mean, JTT took over that game. That was pretty wild to see a defensive player have that much of an impact at crucial moments when they needed it for the Buckeyes, and well-deserved for him to be player of the week nationally, either side of the ball. I feel like if there was a better bet that I would love to take, it's Ohio State's team total, whatever their team total is for their points, because I think they're going to get theirs. I don't know if the defense is going to be as dominant as they saw. That's the side of the ball that I'm curious to see, although they don't need to do much against this Northwestern team. But I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to hold my breath, I'm going to close my eyes, and I'm going to lay the points with the Buckeyes. Because I go back to the game against Iowa when it looks like they're struggling. They had 3 possessions, they had to punt, settle for field goals. And then you look up and they got 54 on the board. Like, if they come anywhere close to 40 plus, they'll cover this easily. So I'm going to go ahead.
I don't know how much Northwestern would score.
Right.
That's the biggest issue. If Northwestern can get to 10 points, I think this might stay within the number.
Yeah.
We'll see.
All right, so you're going with the big number?
Yeah. I'm gonna
Closing your eyes. You're going to lay them. What about Michigan? Number 5, Michigan on the road at Rutgers here. They're favored by 26.5 on the road, Danny.
Another monster number. Now this, remember we talked about TCU and the motivation they might have, where they came out in the initial poll, but I didn't want to lay the points and for style points because I didn't know if TCU was up to the task. Michigan against Rutgers, they will be up to the task. And this team, they'll get Blake Corum going. This is a stat padding game if there ever is one, both for the Heisman hopes of Blake Corum, but also to impress the committee. Remember, Michigan's schedule is light. Their non-conference was a joke. They already played Penn State, and that was an impressive win. But they need style points from this point forward going into that Ohio State game. I think they open up the offense. I think they keep it open. I think this is an absolute blowout.
I'm with you. I'm going to lay the points here with the road favorite in Michigan. I think if you look at Rutgers right now, too, they're in a bad spot. Gavin Wimsatt, their quarterback, left last week with a shoulder injury. It's still unknown whether or not he'll be back. Noah Vidral would take over if he does. They've already fired their offensive coordinator, Sean Gleason, earlier this season. And the bottom line is they just haven't been able to muster anything. I mean, last week, 134 total yards versus Minnesota. And Michigan's got a better defense. So the reality is, Michigan's coming off a dominant win over Little Brother. I don't think they'll have any problem whatsoever. And to your point, style points matter. You better believe they're going to be pushing the ball down the field and handing off to Blake Corum as much as possible.
Michigan 8-0 for the second time under Jim Harbaugh. All right, number 15, Penn State at Indiana. Hoosiers 5-game losing streak. They're making a lot of changes to their depth chart heading into this one. Nittany Lions favored by 14 on the road, Brady.
I was wavering back and forth with this one, in part because, again, after a loss like that to Ohio State, maybe you're still licking your wounds, you're still feeling sorry for yourself. But Penn State could still be a 10-2 football team and go play in a big bowl game. They're very much capable of that. And I think they're very much the better team. If you look at their schedule and their only 2 losses are to Michigan, Ohio State, it's not too bad. 2 top 5 teams. So I think this is a spot to get back on track here for Penn State. I won't be shocked if you don't see Drew Aller come in, their 5-star quarterback, at some point, start kind of working more towards the future. But to me, it's the rushing attack. And I think it's also the pressure that Manny Diaz will be able to put on Connor Basilick and that Indiana offensive line is having a hard time protecting. And then secondary, and their ability to cover down on the back end. That's the difference. I'm laying the 14 points.
Are you saying Drew Aller is going to start?
I'm not saying he's going to start.
All right, then I'm going with the points in Indiana. I got to see it first because that would scare me. I still think Sean Clifford, I think this is a lot of game management. He really struggled with the turnovers last week. I mean, it felt like Penn State had every opportunity to pull off that upset. And credit to Ohio State for causing a lot of those. But there was it gets a little bit loose with Sean Clifford, which is hard to explain when he's played so much football and given such a long leash there from James Franklin and offensive staff. But I think this will be the game. They're so emotionally spent. I think Penn State wins this game, but 2 touchdowns against the Indiana team, playing a lot of younger guys, giving them opportunities, fresh legs, fresher bodies, coming out, great effort. I think they'll hang around for a half. Penn State pulls away late, but I'll take the 14.
I worry for Tom Allen. That's where I think this is potentially going for Indiana. And I worry about then where the locker room stands with NIL, everything else.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
So let's go to Michigan State. Obviously, 8 players suspended after that tunnel brawl at number 16, Illinois here. Illinois looking to take control of the Big Ten West. They're favored by 16 at home. The total 41.5, Brady.
Yeah, I'm laying the points here with Illinois. It's a big number. And look, I think Michigan State has the potential to keep this one close. The bottom line is just a lot of distractions, the suspensions. On top of that, their offense doesn't have the same potency with Jalen Berger running the football. Peyton Thorne in the passing game has never really become what they had hoped it was going to be. And you're going up against the number 1 defense in the Big Ten right now in Illinois. So this is a tough spot, I think, for Michigan State to be in. To have to go on the road versus what I believe to be the team that's going to represent the Big Ten West.
Same. I feel like the right side to be on would be Michigan State. This is a big number for Illinois, who doesn't really blow out teams on the schedule. But I'm with you. Until I see what I'm going to get from Michigan State, 8 players lost, a couple key contributors on the defensive side of the ball. Where's their mindset? The only reason I wonder, is do they take on this us against the world mentality? And you've seen teams do that, rally around a cause. hey, our players, we were trying to defend ourselves, whatever. It was an awful
interesting cause
situation.
to rally around.
No, I know, but that's how teams work, and no one's given us a chance. And they've done it a couple times this year. I think it was Wisconsin, right? They came out and beat Wisconsin.
Yeah, and double overtime.
Yeah, it was like, what just happened there? And they were a heavy underdog there. But until I see where this team is, I'll trust the team that carries in the momentum, that is playing for something, that is experienced. The first time they've been ranked in the CFP rankings, like there's a lot more excitement playing at home, the crowd, the energy. So I'll go ahead and lay the points too.
Recapping what we've got going on this week, Week 10 in the Big Ten. Between Brady and Danny, they both like the under, and Ohio State going up against Northwestern there. They lay the points with Michigan and also Illinois. Coming up to the Pac-12, 5 Pac-12 teams in the college football playoff top 25 rankings. We'll take a look at those games and who has the most on the line out of these teams next. Pac-12 ranked games we've got coming up. So, Danny, I'm going to toss this to you. You got 3 teams sitting at 7-1, Oregon, USC, UCLA. Which team has the best shot to make it to the playoff?
The best chance for the Big 12 to get there, Pac-12 is USC. Because
I just saw Brady mouth Oregon.
Oh, well, no, so here's the problem. I think they might be the best team, but I think if you want a team from the Pac-12, you don't want to compare Oregon to a Georgia, and you have to avoid that at all costs. Your best case of getting somebody in is USC beating Oregon big, and they have a good loss that they suffered, and then you can say, hey, we're just as good as Georgia. We beat the same team you did, and you blow them out.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Here's if I'm the Pac-12, why I don't want it to be USC is because they're going to the Big Ten. So you probably want it to be a team
that's a great point.
Yeah.
Still going to be part of the
good point.
conference in the foreseeable future.
Yes, then
it looks bad at the top 2 teams at one point where USC and UCLA, and you're like, well, bye-bye.
And both of those teams have a really good chance to win the conference.
Exactly.
That is awful.
Okay, so let's get into these games. We have number 8, Oregon at Colorado, a team that's 7-1 versus a team that's 1-7 here. Oregon favored by 31 and a hook. The total 61.5. Brady, we'll start with you.
Bo Nix is coming off arguably his best performance throwing the football last week. I think there's a lot to be said about how much progress they've really made. Covered the spread last week versus Cal. I didn't think they would. I thought Cal would maybe keep that game a little bit closer, but give a lot of credit to them. This is a big number, though, and it's one in which you're on the road. You're taking on a Colorado team that, they fired their coach, but they haven't really given up. Played ASU close last week. Deion Smith will run the ball, kind of keep them in the game. Jordan Tyson can make some big plays down the field. So I'm going to take the 31.5.
Woo!
Just a big number for a road game.
It's a huge number. Colorado is so bad.
They are bad.
Bo Nix for Heisman. I'm not saying I'm not endorsing
did
it.
Oregon,
I'm saying.
We're going to New York soon. Did Oregon buy the big old thing in
Not
Times
yet.
Square?
Yeah, the Joey Harrington one.
Yeah.
They might get it if they get through this game with a big number. I think there's a lot of, this Oregon team, and Bo Nix feeling really good about himself. He told our Dennis Dodd, hey, if we play Georgia again, we beat them. You better back that up with the play on the field. I think they have, again, kind of like some of these teams need to make statements. It's really hard to overlook a 49-3 loss to the Georgia Bulldogs. In order to do that, they've got to win, and they've got to win big. And I say they get it against a really lackluster Colorado program.
Oregon 7-1, USC 7-1 here. Cal at number 9, USC. Interesting. Danny, you and I like these weird stats. Brady, you're just okay with them. USC opened as an 18-point favorite. It is now 21 and a hook. Lincoln Riley failed to cover 4 straight games as a 20-point or more favorite against Power 5 teams. Danny, what's your play here?
Also, check the stats, 17-4 against the spread as a more than a touchdown underdog under Justin Wilcox. This defense, I think it'll be an interesting challenge for USC. I mean, they're a program, they've been kind of up and down. Now, Caleb Williams has played really well as of late, but I feel like this is a tricky spot for them against a really good defensive mind and Justin Wilcox, who will have a really good game plan from this one. And I just don't trust USC to put up a win by that many points, especially that hook. So I'll go ahead and take it.
I don't trust USC because their defense. I mean, they gave up 534 yards just a week ago. And so if you're looking at Cal, you say, well, are they much of a threat? I mean, look, Jack Plummer got knocked out of last week's game. He probably will come back to this one. Kai Miller did a good job when he came in. And Jay Knock can run the football. He's the best freshman running back in the Pac-12. So I think they can keep it within this number. I'm not saying by any means Cal wins this one, but I'll go ahead and take the 21 points there too.
Let's go to our third 7-1 team in the Pac-12, number 12 UCLA at Arizona State. UCLA 7-1, their best 8-game start since 2005. The Bruins favored by 10.5 on the road in this one, Brady.
Yeah, UCLA with a nice win and cover last week versus Stanford. Zach Charbonnet really led the way. DTR is kind of more of an average at best performance. Kind of a big number for me, though. Going up against the Arizona State team on the road that I think is showing some signs of life. You look at Trenton Bourguet last week, the way he played. You didn't think they could throw the football when Emory Jones was in there.
Right.
Then you're looking at what he's been able to do just in one start and some other playing time. 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions? It's been a dramatic difference between the two. Emory Jones only has 5 on the year. He's played 7 games. So that's the big difference for me. I think Valladay at the running back, too, kind of keeps them, in this one, being more of a playmaker there for Arizona State. So I'll take the 10.5 points in the home dog.
I think UCLA is a very interesting team because we were talking about teams to get there. They did lose to Oregon, but statistically they were right there with them. And their best case is to get a rematch, help Oregon, and get them, beat them big in a Pac-12 championship game. In this game itself, I'm totally with you, Brady. I think Arizona State, since they made the move to let go of Herm Edwards, they've kind of, got a fresh start. The team, they made a couple adjustments, playing a new quarterback. I think they found something. I think they're playing really hard, especially playing at home. I like UCLA to win this game, probably closer to a touchdown, though.
All right. Interesting game. We're going to have to wait and see what happens with this one because we didn't really know what was going to happen at the last one. Arizona at number 14, Utah, waiting to see if Cam Rising will play. Of course, we all thought he was going to play until he didn't. So Kyle Whittingham saying he's much further ahead now than he was at this point last week. Take it with a grain of salt, but Utah's favored by 17.5 in this one, Brady.
I don't even know what to make of that. I mean, he went out for warm-ups. He walked out for the
captains, yeah.
Toss. I mean, everything led you to think that he was going to play in that game, and they roll out Bryson Barnes, who actually did a good job. And despite the fact that Dalton Kincaid left that game, he got hurt. Tavion Thomas didn't make the trip. So a lot of question marks around Utah. At this point in time in the week, I look at it and go, 17.5 points, I'll take him in Arizona. Jaden DeLora can sling the football around. He'll run around, make some plays too. It's a much more competitive Arizona team. So not knowing what to expect from Utah, I'll take the points.
By the way, I think this demonstrates why college football needs a system like the NFL where you have to declare your injuries. I hated it for the broadcast.
I kind of like it, though.
Oh, I know you
Brady.
would. But then there's a lot of conspiracy theories, and then you got people searching. There you go. I think you should have to declare, especially if you're calling a game and you get out there and you look like you're not prepared, and yet it was
You
0.
want to give him, you want to give that guy his time to shine.
That's part of it. That's really the biggest reason. I talked to Petros Papadakis today.
Yeah.
I
would have been ticked.
Kyle Whittingham didn't tell their SID.
I know.
So the reality is, if you don't tell the sports information directly,
Right.
you're going to have a hard time relaying the message.
Absolutely. But that, to me, is why you need the system like the NFL does, where it's structured. You have to put your injuries on there. If you don't, you get fined from the conference, whatever it is. In any case, I'm with you. Jetfish, Arizona, they're a much better team. I think they keep it within the number.
Take the points with Arizona in that one. We're going to wait to see what happens with Cam Rising. Number 23, Oregon State at Washington. Oregon State on a 3-game winning streak. Washington is favored in this one, though, by 3. The total's 55, Danny.
The Beavers 6-2, quietly. Coming in the CFP initial rankings, Jonathan Smith has done a really good job creating a winner here. I think they go on the road against a team in Washington who had so much momentum earlier this season with Michael Penix. Kind of just feels like they've hit a little bit of a roadblock. Kalen DeBoer, I like the long-term outlook for this program. But in this one, I'm going to go with the hot hand here in the Oregon State team.
I'm on the other side. I'm on Washington here. It's a tough place to play. It's a loud place as far as Pac-12 standards go. After they went through that great start for Washington, then they went through a little bit of a lull, 2-game skid. Now, past 2 games, Penix has played fantastic. 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, 75% completion percentage. I think Washington goes ahead and takes care of business here. We also don't know if Chance Nolan will be back. Ben Gulbranson has taken over in his place at Oregon State. He's done a pretty good job. But 3.5 points, I'll go ahead and lay those with the Huskies.
Recapping what we've got going on this week in the Pac-12 here, a lot of agreement on which teams will cover. Do you guys like the agreement there? You both like Cal, Arizona State, and Arizona. I mean, as far as your competition,
feel great.
At least you should feel good about it.
Put the house on it.
Feel good about it.
Well, by the way, they're all dogs. We need to adjust the one graphic there. But yeah, no, I mean, I think you should feel pretty good about that.
You do differ on every total. Nope. One of them you agree on. All right, coming up, Tulane having its best year in 24 years, 3-0 against the spread on the road. They are on the road against Tulsa, but maybe don't trust the trend on this one next. CBS Sports HQ presented by Papa John's, taking a look at AAC ranked games we got coming up Saturday. Number 19, Tulane, favored by 7.5 on the road at Tulsa there. They've been good on the road this year thus far. Number 25, UCF there in the college football playoff rankings, coming in at number 25 at Memphis, favored by 3.5 on the road. So let's start with number 19, Tulane at Tulsa here. Tulane 3-0 against the spread on the road so far this year. They're favored by 7.5 at Tulsa. Danny, what do you think?
They might win on the road, but a touchdown and a hook is too many points for me. I like what Willie Fritz has done at Tulane. Really nice season that they put on display so far. Pratt, their quarterback, very physical, been banged up, found his way through a couple of those injuries. But I think that Tulsa keeps it within that number in a little bit of a shootout type game.
I'm with you. Tulane's been good on the road. You talked about some of the wins: Kansas State, Houston, South Florida. The only thing I'm concerned with Tulane here, because their defense is going to travel in this one. That's really what's led them. Their top 25 defense. Is the fact that they do have UCF next week. Is this maybe a trap game? You've got that top 20 ranking. Are you looking ahead maybe to that big matchup? That's my only concern, and for that reason, I think Davis, Brent, and Tulsa can keep this one within that number. So I'm with you. I'm taking the points in Tulsa.
So
I said shootout. I meant low scoring because we're on the same page.
We're on the same page.
Yes.
All right, so let's talk about UCF coming in at number 25 at Memphis this week. Their quarterback went out last game. Gus Malzahn saying it's day-to-day right now, just kind of a wait and see on this one. They're favored by 3.5 to total 58 and a hook, Brady.
Yeah, I'm on the other side on this one, and in part because same reason. Maybe UCF is looking ahead to that matchup versus Tulane, but without knowing right now with John Rice Plumlee whether or not he plays. Mikey Keene played well in his place, but it's just too much at this point. I think there's a number of reasons. I'm kind of looking at it thinking, Memphis can keep this one close. Seth Hennigan can sling the football around, and he'll be able to keep within the number. So I'll take the 3.5 points.
The reason John Rice Plumlee won the starting job over last year's starter, Mikey Keene, was because he fits the system better. He's more of a running quarterback, which is always what Gus Malzahn has really wanted, and they've excelled in that position. But Plumlee's been up and down throwing the football. Keene gave his consistency there, but because of the question marks of not knowing who it's going to be, I'll go with Memphis in those points.
You know what y'all are ended with? Lock unity
on
both of these games. That's how we like it. Recapping there, both like Tulsa and the other, both like Memphis and the under as well. Winning ingredients delivered by Papa John's. Danny and Brady giving us their best bets for Week 10. Brady, we'll start with you.
Tennessee and Georgia. It's the game everyone wants to watch. It's going to be a little more low scoring. I like the under of that one in particular, in part because I think Georgia is going to cover that spread. I think if they do, it's going to take a great defensive performance. They have the ability to match up. Kirby Smart's one of the best defensive minds. So first road block, I think, for Tennessee in their quest to try to get to the college football playoff. And I think it's one in which it's a lower scoring game. Someone finally slows down that Tennessee offense.
I think, too, they'll try to slow down the game itself on the offensive side of the ball, which should lead to less possessions. I'm going to go to one of the greatest rivalries in the sport.
Rivalries?
Yes. Florida State traveling to Miami. Now, I like Florida State laying the 7.5, not because I went there, but because I'm going to be there in person to put it over the edge. That emotional support and energy I'll be delivering for them. In all seriousness, this Miami team is struggling. They are not a very good football team right now. And Florida State, we thought that Texas came in as a 3-loss team that was ranked. Florida State has a way better resume than them. They got a nice win against LSU. And their 3 losses are against really good teams. When Florida State has been expected to win, they've won, and they've won big. So I think Florida State does that this weekend in Miami.
I mean, I just hope someone scores a touchdown.
Hey, we'll be fine.
Oh, it's Florida State.
Yes.
Are you going to give them like a little pep talk?
No, unless they ask.
Exactly.
Do you get sideline passes?
Not yet. I'm working on them. I just want a parking pass.
Picks there. There are 4 of them between Brady, Quinn, Danny, Kanell. Danny, enjoy the game. Brady, enjoy the stockyards. I'm not sure if you're going to make it there.
Probably not.
Probably not, but enjoy it anyways. You guys enjoy Week 10. Danny Kanell, Brady Quinn, I'm Amanda Guerra. Good luck with your picks this week. We'll see how you guys do. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.